What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is Preview Picks, the show where I go over the comic books coming out this Wednesday, give you my ideas as to what they're all about, and whether there's something you should talk to your comic book shop about in advance. So make sure you subscribe to get one of these every single week. The first thing that I want to talk about is Spider-Gwen number 26, which is the second part of the Gwenom story arc. So this is by Jason Latour and Robbie Rodriguez, and it's really dealing with the first real serious portrayal of Gwen Stacy from Earth 65 as Gwenom, this combination of Spider-Gwen and Gwenom. So it's really probably one of the most interesting things that's happened in the series of recently. So it's definitely something that I'm going to be following along with, simply because I really like Robbie Rodriguez's style. And, overall, Spider-Gwen was a book that I was following until it kind of fell off the wayside about 10 issues or so. So it's definitely something that I'm going to give another shot to. Next, let's talk about Image's Kill or Be Killed number 14 by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. While I haven't really caught up with this story, it's still a book that I pick up every single week that it comes out, just because this creative team has done a lot of really fantastic work over the history of it, and I really like the first few issues. I've got to kind of really sit down, and I like to read them entire story chunks, like big arcs. So this is the end of arc number 3, so basically once this is done, I'm going to go back and read all the other ones that I've already purchased, and just kind of sit down and dedicate a night to reading them to kind of absorb the story as thoroughly as possible. So it's definitely something that I'd recommend people pick up if you're more of like a month-to-month kind of reader. That could work for you too. It's just that I know that Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips do a great job on this book, and I just kind of want to keep people aware that it's coming out and it's out there. After that, I want to talk about The Forge and the casting. This is a reprint of the first issues that started this Dark Knights, started off Dark Days and then became Dark Knights, and it's a director's cut. So the real interesting thing about the director's cuts is they usually introduce a lot of behind the scenes or content that wasn't necessarily included in the original issues. So the one thing that I'm really looking for in this is kind of like a grouping of scripts and things like that, to get a sampling of what Scott Snyder was writing or James Tynion was writing in order to create these concepts and what they kind of gave for instruction to the artist. I really like that technical behind the scenes aspect of comic booking. So I'm thinking about picking this up. It is a little bit more expensive at $8, $7.99 for issues that I already own, but if it has that kind of extra content, it might be worthwhile for me to pick up. I'm not sure about you guys though, but I do want to let you know that it's out there. Another book that I'm going to be picking up is Valiant's Eternity number 2. So this is a continuation of the Divinity storylines, where we see, the main characters from Divinity, their child has been stolen and brought into this parallel world where it's kind of being seen as this oracle or forthcoming. It's a really interesting kind of concept. I'm really excited to see where this one goes, because it is a relatively limited series from Matt Kindt, but overall the continuation and the kind of progress of the storyline is something that I'm really looking forward to. So it's one of the books that's kind of got me tied into Valiant at this point in time, along with Exo Manowar and Bloodshot Salvation. So definitely a recommendation from me. Check it out, but if you get the opportunity to get number 1, grab it. It's going to provide a little bit more context. Next, let's dip into Marvel, and let's talk about Old Man Logan number 31. So after the conclusion of this kind of Maestro story arc, where we thought that Old Man Logan was going to go back to the Wasteland, but no, he's ended up fighting the Maestro who came from the Wasteland after kind of supplanting the power of the former Bruce Banner. There's all kinds of crap that's going on in that one, but it was particularly interesting. What I'm really interested to see is what Ed Brisson does with this new kind of, Scarlet Samurai arc. Just based on the imagery we've seen, it looks like it's going to be somebody relatively important to Old Man Logan or to Logan in general. So I'm really excited to see what this one's all about. Not necessarily the top pick on my list, but it could get me back into Old Man Logan. I haven't really had that much spark for the series since Jeff Lemire left, and Andrea Sorrentino went off of it. But overall, I'm looking to get back into that storyline because it had such promise when it came forward, and I'm really interested to see what kind of story Ed tells outside of that kind of Maestro Hulk arc. But to totally change pace, let's go over to Super Sons Annual number 1, which is a bunch of pets. So it looks like we're talking about, Crypto, and then we've got, Ace the Bat Hound, and we've got Damien, and we got Jonathan, and they're kind of like, it's like kids and pets day out. So I'm basically really excited about this, simply because it's very fun. When I picked up Super Sons number 10, which was going over a lot of things, Super Sons number 10 really gave me this serious feeling of joy. I really enjoyed the beginning of Super Sons. I enjoyed the story of how Peter J. Tomasi writes these two particular characters. So I'm really excited to see where this one kind of goes, just because it seems like it's going to be that really lighthearted fare that you'd want, especially knowing that the Super Sons of Tomorrow arc, which is going to deal with almost like a really seriously heinous act toward Jonathan Kent, is coming up in a big crossover event. So this is going to be possibly the last real nice book that comes out in Super Sons for the next 2 months. So definitely something that I'm going to be checking out. However, it might not be for everybody. We can also check out Secret Warriors number 9, which shows this team going up against Mr. Sinister. With the introduction of magic into this storyline, Matthew Rosenberg has been doing a great job with this book. It's one of those things that kind of came out of Secret Empire that you were almost expecting to not necessarily survive, but the unique brand of humor, the way that the story's being told, and the kind of reception that you get from these individuals, or at least the people that are reading it, it might not necessarily be something that's appreciated by everybody, but those people that, found this book based on Matthew Rosenberg's writing style, or just the idea of the characters, have had a lot of fun with this. Overall, it's not necessarily the most serious of comic books, but it's definitely a pretty interesting mix, so it's something that I think that people should check out. It could provide a unique flavor of comic book that you might not necessarily find anywhere else. And if you're talking about unique flavor of comic book, Renato Jones number 5, that's issue 5 of season 2, is coming out, and it's absolutely gonzo, batshit insane amazingness that happens in, it just pours out of Kaare Andrews' head onto the page, and it's you can call it a social commentary currently. It's basically what he needs to get out onto the page to explain the current situation in the form of the freelancer taking on the 1%. And I've always loved this book. It's just, I'm just on board for everything. It might not be for everybody, but it's definitely something that I'm picking up and that I'd recommend you guys check out, at least to get an idea what it's all about. It's just wild insanity, and it's awesome. I love it. Then back on the annual kicks, we're going to get Batman Annual number 2. So this is a story from Tom King and Lee Weeks, which is going to be dealing with date nights and last kisses and stuff like that. So it's a story about Bruce and Selina, and their first kiss, their last kiss, all kind of these things are just kind of rolled in there. So there's Jeremiah's hit me up in the comments of one of my older videos, and he's just like, this is a tearjerker, and I was like, oh, don't ruin it, don't spoil it for me, because Batman Annual number 1 was okay. Batman Annual number 2, if this is the kind of context, and we've kind of got all this information coming from the Selina and Bruce relationship, and then from the art that I've seen from Lee Weeks that's got kind of teased and posted by Tom King, I'm really excited to see where this one goes. The best thing about this is that annuals are becoming important again. They're not just kind of throwaway stories, they're tying into the greater continuity of the actual books. So it makes it more important to actually pick them up. So I'm really excited to see where this one goes. Highly recommend picking up Batman Annual number 2 at this point in time. Then to finish off the regular recommendations, we have Moon Knight number 189. So this is the second book from Max Bemis, and after the introduction of the Sun King, this Amun-Ra, who embodies this former military psycho patient it's just a lot of actual parallels that go along with the Mark Spector storyline, and it's creating a real tangible rivalry between these two characters, kind of like out of the ether, just out of nothingness. So I was really excited to see what Max Bemis did with that. It's a lot more than what I was expecting from the book, so I'm really keyed in on what Moon Knight 189 is going to be able to do for the character, especially since I was so in love with Moon Knight from Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood. It's a little too early in the run to tell whether it's going to be truly great, but it's definitely something you guys should be keeping your eyes on, especially if you're Moon Knight fans or if you're fans of that more street level kind of hero. So it's definitely something that I would be keyed in on if I were you. Now let's go on to new number 1s, and we have Mystik U number 1, which shows Zatanna kind of going into this mystical university, which is going to be a younger character and a younger version of a lot of other characters that are really kind of part of that magical, mystical nature of DC. So I'm really it's not necessarily a book that I would say catches my interest. Overall, it is a pretty interesting concept, so I'm going to be flipping through it when I go to the comic book shop on Wednesday. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a guaranteed buy from me, but it's a concept that's got enough to really kind of spark my interest and get me on board with at least checking it out. So I'd recommend that people check it out. That's one of the things that I encourage a lot is, you might not necessarily be the perfect fit for a comic book, but, take a look at it, see what it has to offer, and see if it has something that could be, for you. You might not necessarily know until you actually take a look at it. That's why, things like the DC Comics New Talent Showcase, which is coming out this week as well, that's a great way to get introduced to new writers, new creators, new artists, new combinations of people that are going to be appearing in a lot of your books, that are your favorite books that are coming out. So it's one of those things where while you might not necessarily see these guys that come out in this New Talent Showcase on your favorite book, it might not be on Batman, it might not be on Superman, but there are a lot of them that are going to be taking part in projects all across comic books. So it's a great way to get to know them as creators in their first kind of foray into comic booking. And then you can actually catch up and see their evolution as they continue to work inside the industry. So it's definitely a really cool concept. And New Talent Showcase is a pretty expensive book at $7.99, especially for unproven talent, but it's something that I'd always consider buying just to show support for new creators getting into the industry. The last thing that I want to talk about is Batman Creature of the Night #1 by Kurt Busiek. And this is interesting. I don't really have a lot nailed down on the concept. I know that there was a Superman book that came out earlier that's relatively similar. This is a part of a limited 4-part series, so I'm not really sure what to make of it, but I feel like it's something that I'm going to have to pick up and digest. That's going to be, it should be pretty interesting. So it's definitely got my attention, even though I am a little bit overloaded on Batman right now with everything that's going on at DC. It feels like every other book is a Bat book, which is a good and a bad thing. So those are the books that are coming out this Wednesday, but I want to know what you guys are going to grab too, in case there's something that I'm not necessarily going to pick up. So let me know in the comments down below, and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.